Our next guest, Rabbi Nochum Schapiro, is another driving force behind Sinai Down Under, and it has been an honor to work with him on this amazing project. Moishi and Rabbi Schapiro are both my favorite contacts in my telephone. Since 1989, Rabbi Schapiro has been the co-director with his wife Fruma of Chabad North Shore. He's initiated a wide range of activities and programs for all ages. His passion for Yiddishkeit and his genuine care and love for all serves as an inspiration and a shining light for the North Shore community. In addition, he serves as the president of the Rabbinical Council of New South Wales, vice president of the Rabbinical Association of Australasia, and regional director of JLI. It's great to have you here, Rabbi. Please, can I ask you tonight, how can Kabbalah help us in times of crisis like the one we're currently experiencing?
Thank you, Katali. And I echo what Moishi said earlier, that it's been a pleasure working with you. And thank you so much for volunteering your time and giving so much of yourself to Sinai Down Under for the benefit of so many hundreds and thousands of Jews here in Australia. Last night, 12 years ago last night, Saturday night, at the end of Shabbat, Parshas Eikev, I had a experience where I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage and ultimately a terrible, incredibly terrible headache for which I was hospitalized for a number of weeks. The pain for which was excruciating. What was going through my mind? Let me share a little bit with you of what was going through my mind during those days that I was lying in hospital. My good wife, Fruma, as you mentioned earlier, calmed me by telling me all I had was a severe migraine. And it did calm me, I have to say. But at the hospital, they kind of blurted out these words such as a form of a stroke that really kind of would scare you. And what enabled me to get through that experience was the teachings of Kabbalah, of Hasidus, that lying there, I knew that there was a purpose and there would be something greater that came about because of that experience. Now, let me first say and preface that when one goes through a crisis, it's not the time for someone to come to them and philosophize and explain to them ideas at that moment when they're going through the crisis. They're not going to take it in. But if you learn beforehand, and if you have a perspective beforehand that helps you in life, you always can revert back to that when in times of need. Just today, I was speaking to a close member of ours who unfortunately had a fall, a young guy, early 50s, and he had a fall and he snapped his neck. He broke 3 vertebrae in his neck, and he's lying in hospital. He was lying on the floor, and at first, and he had to get up to get a phone in order for him to get to hospital. And he calls me today. I've been in contact with him the entire time. And he says to me that, thank God, the doctors have said that he was saved by less than a hair, that the fractured vertebrae could have was less than a hair away from severing his spinal cord. And we know what that means. And he says to me, I thank God every day. I am so grateful. People say to me it was a terrible year. I don't see it that way, he says. I see it as God is looking after me. And then he continues to say, I want to thank you for the ideas and teachings that you've given me over the many years, which helped me have this perspective. So in order for us to have the strength to deal with life's challenges, it is vital that when things are going well, we learn. And what we learn most is the teachings of Kabbalah and Chassidus, which really give us an incredible foundation and basis to have the right perspective of what's really going on. So let me share again with you what I was thinking of at that time. We are taught that there could be what we call incremental growth and exponential growth. Every person is put on earth in order to grow, to add, and to always reach a higher level than the day before, the year before, and so on. When, however, we need to make a leap and a jump and an exponential step forward, at that time, we need to sometimes go through a loss of our previous state. In order to reach a new level that is beyond anything you had before, you can't hold back, you can't hold on to the state and level that you had beforehand. And therefore, we're taught that in order for the Jewish people to be ready to receive the Torah, they had to go through Egypt. They had to go through the kill of Egypt in order to lose their previous state, so they are a receptacle to say, Nasiv and Ishmael, we will do when we hear that the Jewish people received at Sinai. And the same thing is true in every point of our history. Whenever we had to have this exponential growth, this incredible leap, beforehand, there might have been a loss of the previous state. So when Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 students, what does he do thereafter? He knows he has to go and create another number of students that are going to be the ones to continue Judaism going forward. And indeed, he makes 5 students, but those 5 students are the ones which the entire old tradition is dependent on. One of which is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, the one we might call the father of Kabbalah. And so it was, as I was lying there in hospital, that I knew that God had a plan, and that this event that took place, that happened to me, was just a breakage of my previous being and existence in order to bring on something greater, something exponentially greater. At that time, this is what's going through my mind at the time, this is subjectively what I'm thinking, we were negotiating about really growing our institution in an incredible way beforehand. To buy something that was 6 times larger, both in property space and building space, and therefore being able to do so much more for the community. And I knew then it's going to happen, even though I didn't know how, but I knew it will. And indeed it did. That's the mindset that we must have when something is broken. When something doesn't work out, we know what is God's message for us. We're going to grow so much greater through this experience. So as we sit here tonight and we think of COVID, and we think of the lockdown, and we think of the brokenness of so many people, and the whole world is going through this incredible break and this incredible descent, if you'd like, we know that it is certainly for the purpose of a greater ascent. Here we are, over hundreds and hundreds of people coming together in Sinai Down Under almost on a weekly basis. This could never happen without COVID. But this is not something that is sufficient for us. We know that each one of us in our own lives have to think, okay, how am I going to grow exponentially from this experience? With my family, with my spouse, in my work, in any way possible, how am I going to grow through this experience? But as a community and as a world, we should not take anything for an answer except for the ultimate coming of Mashiach. The Alter Rebbe writes, founder of Chabad, that in order to receive the Torah at Sinai, the Jews had to be 210 years in Egypt. But because the revelation of the Torah when Mashiach comes, the Torah that Mashiach will teach, which is really the inner dimension of Torah, the mystical dimension of Torah, is even greater, we have to go through 1950 years of exile to reach that great level. May it be something that happens immediately. That through this experience, we reach the ultimate zenith of what the world was created for, the coming of Mashiach and the revelation of the deeper mystical dimensions of Torah, that each one of us will be replenished through them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Schapiro. Thank you for opening up about your ordeal. It's so inspiring also to learn about the concept of going through a rebirth in order to achieve a higher level, especially with everything that's going on in the world and with the new energy coming with the blowing of the shofar in the high holy days that are coming up.